So when I'm talking to parents, it's really about how do you cultivate the passion? And when I'm talking to students, it's about how do you cultivate your own passion? Because passion is the fuel that'll override anything.
Welcome to Successful with ADHD. I'm Brooke Schnittman. Let's get started. Today I have Todd Hartley. He's the #1 bestseller for the book Accelerating Yes. He actually knocked Prince Harry off of his bestseller list, and he's one of Tony Robbins' best audience rated speakers. He became a regular speaker for Tony at the start of the pandemic, and Tony hired Todd to train each of his 100 plus businesses to accelerate their sales results and generate more revenue using video. After Tony's companies crushed their revenue goals, he pushed Todd out on his stage to start teaching his video selling strategies to Tony's clients. And the salespeople that have gone through his selling faster with video training closed over $6 billion last year alone. And on top of that, he is a fellow ADHDer, my friends, and has struggled his whole life with ADHD and learning disabilities and dedicates a lot of his life to helping people with ADHD with his affiliation with the SALT Center in Arizona. I'm proud to have Todd Hartley here today.
Brooke,
Welcome.
I'm super excited. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. And it was great meeting you in person. And it's great seeing you again today. You were the keynote speaker at the Event Planner Expo where I first met you. I just love connecting people in the neurodivergent space to know that they're not alone. And there's very successful people out there that have gone off to do their passion and are helping others and sustaining a living. So Todd, when did you learn that you had ADHD and learning disabilities?
Yeah, I learned in 4th grade. It became obvious when I was falling behind rapidly, and reading and math was a problem. And but I'm old school, so this was way back in the day in the early 80s, and they actually didn't have it was just ADD. We didn't buy an H back then. Everybody was lumped into one group. And I was grateful for it, but I didn't know anybody when I was diagnosed. There wasn't the kind of support that you've gotten now. So it was a bit isolating and confusing.
Yeah. So in 4th grade, you learned this. You didn't really know anyone. There was no hyperactive in the ADD term. So how was it isolating for you in the school system, not knowing people who had ADHD or ADD
Well,
back then?
The school didn't have any services for us. So I sat, this is so humiliating. I sat most of the time at the principal's office with bad kids that were waiting to talk to the principal. That's where I missed all of the grammar and punctuation training. My school didn't know how to handle kids that learned differently. So I was 100% sure I was stupid. I was 100% sure I was a bad kid, which, look, I haven't even had a moving violation since January 20th, 1996. So I'm a rule follower. And
wow.
this really played on my psyche for a long time. And then eventually I just got put into the classes with kids that weren't functioning. Maybe the hardest thing was overhearing a teacher that I deeply admired in middle school telling my parents, as I was out in the hallway, not supposed to be listening, I overheard the teacher say to my folks, "You'll be lucky if Todd graduates from high school, but college for Todd is out of the question." And what's amazing is, for my parents, what's out of the question in the house that I grew up in is not graduating from college and not living a life of passion where you can go out the door every day, be incredibly proud of yourself and serve people. That was out of the question. And so my parents, thank God, never gave up on me and never made me feel less than my older sisters who were honor roll student all the way through college. And my parents just pushed me in the right direction to be uniquely me.
Wow. That's huge that your parents not only, of course, loved you, but knew enough at that point to support all of you. And I mean, it's hard to raise a child with ADHD. And I don't know if your parents have it or not, but the fact that they believed in you and unconditionally supported you is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I think once you've been diagnosed and you've been around people that have it, you can kind of see the traits in others. And yes, my parents have it. My sisters have it in different ways. They were able to channel it earlier than I was.
Sure.
Took me a lot longer to have all those elements come together. But the good news is, like, even when I couldn't add or subtract or divide or, do any of that stuff because of dyslexia and my attention disorders, my mom would say to me, don't worry, you've got the entrepreneurial spirit in you.
She
And
knew.
if you have to hire somebody to manage your books, you're going to hire somebody to manage your books and nobody will ever know. And you know who really one of the closest people in my life is? My CFO. She's like my big sister. And, we meet several times a week. I have 3 businesses. You just have to figure out your own path. And Brooke, you brought it up in the introduction. You brought up the magic word, which is the fuel that can get people through anything that's keeping them from achieving their ultimate breakthrough and transformation in their life so they can live a life with passion. And that one word is passion. Passion is the fuel. So if you're bouncing all over the walls because you got so much friggin' energy and so much excitement, then that can also be channeled. And the passion can be like, here's what I do. You mentioned earlier the SALT Center at the University of Arizona. And if I can just jump right forward, these are the people,
Please,
that saved my life. And I don't use that term in a loose way. I believe they saved my life because they allowed me to learn how to become the best version of myself. SALT stands for Strategic Alternative Learning Techniques. And every damn day, in every scenario, whenever I'm confronted with something that is a challenge, I'm like, dude, what are your strategic alternative learning techniques? And when I go down and work with students at the U of A in Tucson, what I notice is these are incredibly bright kids. Some of these kids are so bright, they speak multiple languages and maybe can't read, but they speak fluently multiple languages to the point where they have memorized words so they can cope and survive. And these are incredibly bright people that have been mislabeled. So when I'm working with students, what I'm normally finding is the kids that have ADHD are incredibly passionate in certain areas, and they have hyper focus in those areas. And so what I'm normally doing, and I'll just give you a little bit of the conversation because it always goes something like this. I'm like, getting ready to start a day of training or an in-between break. I'll be like, Brooke, what do you do when you're not, in class, when you're not here? What are you occupying your time with?
tennis.
And tennis, right? And I'll go, do you ever like lose time in tennis, Brooke? Like you just forget, like the whole day just blazed by you?
Time and
And
space,
Brooke
100%.
says,
Yes.
right, sometimes I even forget to eat, Brooke says to me. And you know what that
Sometimes
is?
I forget to go to the bathroom until I really gotta go.
Right. What this is the example that there's hyper focus in certain areas, and we actually have selection biases. I'm not a fan of believing that people have attention disorders. I think we have selection biases and they're different, which means I can put Brooke on a tennis court. I could put Todd working on a video for a client or Todd on stage teaching. And I've got laser focus, like world-class elite level focus. And if you put me somewhere else where I don't care about it, then I've got a
Hypofocus.
I've got the opposite, right? So
Yes.
I just want us to realize that it's not impossible to focus. It's just impossible to focus on things you don't care about. And candidly, learning how to fake it in those scenarios is incredibly helpful.
100%. So, wow, you just brought up a lot of really important points. Being able to fake it. So, you had said that your sisters were able to manage their ADHD in school a lot better than you. And very often, boys are diagnosed with hyperactive ADHD and girls the inattentive ADHD. And girls are so much more likely to mask it or camouflage it or fake it, as you mentioned. So I'm curious if that was the case in their situation where you were just so outwardly hyperactive, like there was no faking it for you.
Right. I was just overflowing with excitement and passion. And, that's a heart and a mind that wants to explore. Try putting me in a chair for 8 hours a day.
Yeah, no thanks. First of all, the human brain is not meant to focus for 8 hours in
Right.
general. And then you try to put a kid with ADHD who can't sit still in a seat, it's like jail. So, anyway, I am curious. Your parents seemed like an integral part of
Yeah.
your confidence and your journey. Were they entrepreneurs as well, or teachers that they were able to figure out like your strengths?
Yeah. It's really interesting that you bring that up and that you identify it because my parents were both entrepreneurs. They had two different businesses, and my grandparents partially raised us because my grandparents worked on both of my parents' companies and were always
Mhm.
in the home. And so my parents just identified that I had certain gifts. I mean, parents that are listening to this, I'm sure you could identify your children's gifts. And for me, I had a very low confidence, very negative outlook that persisted well into my mid 20s and impacted my ability to develop relationships with girls. Because the biggest lie I told myself is, why would she be interested in me when I'm one of the slow kids? Right. And still that hurts, just to think about all the time that I wasted. And what I discovered is my parents would find opportunities for me to shine. So where was I shining? I was shining on the baseball field or in athletic competitive environments. By the way, if you're competitive and you have passion, you can override almost any disability. And
A hundred
passion is a
percent.
fuel. Let's not forget it. My parents also realized that I had a gift to gab. I had a gift to tell stories. And every time there was a speaking competition at school, in our community, at the library, any type of speaking thing that was going down, my parents would submit me in, and I would always advance and become, one of the winners of the competition. And honestly, that was the first time in school that any of my peers said something about me being great about something besides sports. So it was eye-opening to me. And my first speaking gig, I'm a professional speaker today. I have appearance I'm doing later today, and I'm honored to do it. But my first speaking gig that I got paid well for was to sit in the back of my parents' car on road trips and not say an effing thing. And they paid well for that. And I accommodated it. But, it's like if you've got the gift, it doesn't matter what it is. You could be a healer or a financial wizard or a chef, and you have ADHD, or you're seeing that in your children, help channel it, and amazing things will blossom.
100%. And thank gosh you had your parents so you were able to build some confidence that you were lacking.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm curious also, when did you start to feel dateable? When did you start to feel like you were truly confident?
Where I was worthy. Um, you know, as I went to the University of Arizona and I graduated, I still had 2 units, and then I switched schools because I went to the rival school, Arizona State, because it was closer to my parents' house. And I took those 2 units. And then I changed environments. And when I changed environments, the story changed. Not only did the story change, but I really started applying what the SALT Center taught me, because I was insecure using extra time at the University of Arizona because I didn't want anybody to know that I struggled. So when I got to Arizona State, nobody knew me. And it didn't matter if I wasn't in the class on test day. It didn't matter if the hot girl didn't see me. Okay. So I started taking their testing accommodations. And instead of 2 units, I stayed for 2 years and left. I was working on getting into graduate school, and I left with a 3.85 and was dominating there. Like, I like to say that I had an intellectual advantage over there, but the reality is I didn't. I just used my time better. I used the support that was available for students like me, and I stopped caring what people thought about me. My grades went through the roof, and then all of a sudden, guess what? The hot girls in classes wanted to study with me, and then things changed.
Ooh.
Is that candid enough for you?
That's candid enough for me. So they were attracted to your confidence and your intellectual performance.
Yeah.
That's very interesting, because the SALT Center, when you were saying the acronym, every single student or adult should get accommodations that are leveling the playing field, right? It shouldn't just be people with ADHD. We should all have IEPs. We should all have individualized education plans, because we all learn differently. ADHD or not, we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. You know this. So for you to feel like because your brain wasn't fully developed at that point, of course you're going to be embarrassed because you were the odd man out leaving the classroom for accommodations. But like, if we can normalize that everyone has some sort of accommodation, then you would have had felt totally different, even in 4th grade, right?
Yeah, I would have felt differently. And this is also part of my character and my development. If you removed that from me, my humility might be different. I'm incredibly grateful for the challenges that I went through, but I also have gone through a lot of therapy over it. And maybe not everybody is going to do that.
Yeah.
And I also know that at the SALT Center, I learned what my own strategic learning styles were, and I learned to master them. And it's such an important element, for like every SALT student, there's a learning specialist. And I think the number, I'm on the board of advisors for the SALT Center today. And what I've discovered is there's something like 25 students for every learning specialist, which is kind of like your guidance counselor. And what they do is they help you unravel the different ways that you learn. And in doing so, they help show you, oh, wait a minute, Todd, if you have visual and auditory perception impairments and your eyes are jumping from line to line while you're reading, why not read with a index card across the page? And then I started doing that, and it started controlling things. And then they would say, wait a minute, if you're going to take your notes, why don't you prepare your notes this way for your own learning style? And then all of a sudden I had developed like an incredible learning style that was customized for me.
Yeah. It's incredible when you can level the playing field.
Yeah. And Brooke, if I didn't go back to school for 2 units that became, more units over 2 years, I might not have seen the real breakthrough and transformation. I might not have applied everything. I could have just graduated, moved on to my life, and thought that whole education experience was a big negative. But the truth was, I stayed in the game long enough, and I got to leave on my terms. And that was winning. And winning, by the way, in school, for somebody who only got C's up until that point, except in PE and sports, winning in school is a
and
whole
public
lot
speaking.
of fun. and public speaking. It's a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be able to identify as a winner in the things that are your passion and not be
Absolutely.
identified as someone who can't learn and conform, but can transform and can use the accommodations that they're given to get a 3.8 GPA and have girls crush on them, and who can become a public speaker for Tony Robbins and create financial wealth for people. I mean, talk about the transformation that you've created for yourself and for others because you finally got what you needed and we're okay with
Yeah,
it.
it's pretty remarkable. It's incredibly humbling. One of the things that I am so grateful for is, I sat in the back of my grandfather's car every day being picked up from school or going to baseball practice. And my grandfather was a believer in the power of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
He believed that the mind can overcome anything. And I was surrounded with a ton of negativity. And right around this time, Tony Robbins released his first book, Unlimited Power. And my
Mm-hmm.
grandfather bought the tapes. And while we were driving in the car, he introduced me to an author that my grandfather called The Kid, because Tony Robbins was 25 at the time.
The Kid.
And
And he
I
was
grew up
Anthony Robbins at
in,
that time, wasn't he?
yes, that's right. Yes, I'm an Anthony baby, by the way. I'm like one of these first generation children that grew up on his material. And I consider myself an Anthony baby. And so I just started hearing from somebody that was different than my educators, somebody that I started to admire, somebody that believed that you could engage your mind and grow it and strengthen it and exercise it just like you would a muscle. And so every day I committed myself to what is an acronym, CANI, and it stands for constant and never ending improvement. And I just committed myself to that. And what I've discovered over a lifetime is my peers, many of them stopped committing themselves to personal growth and development. And I never stopped. And at some point, the people that were wickedly bright, like way off the charts bright, got comfortable, and comfort became the enemy of growth. And I stayed a bit uncomfortable and hungry, like I've got something to prove, like I'm not that kid that was in all of those slow kid classes with kids that were overly medicated that were asleep in these rooms. And I'm not that kid.
And you weren't twice exceptional either. Right.
Right. And I just kept pushing myself to learn.
Yeah. You mentioned the kids who have exceptional IQs, right? And are doing multiple languages, but can't read or do math. We can call that twice exceptional and it's a disability. But at the same time, if you don't have that passion and drive, like you said, and that persistence,
Yeah.
everything else is going to grow and you're going to shrink, right?
Yeah. So I agree. So when I'm talking to parents, it's really about how do you cultivate the passion? And when I'm talking to students, it's about how do you cultivate your own passion? Because passion is the fuel that'll override anything and allow you to live a life of your dreams. And that means getting up every day and making yourself a believer that there's more for you than what people may see, and that there's impact and opportunity for you to give. I can't tell you I can tell you that sometime around 12, I believed firmly, when the outside world was not showing me this, I believed firmly that I was here to impact lives and help people. And I visualized myself every day on the biggest stage in the entire world, using my God-given talents to
Wow.
help people. And I don't know how this happened. I did not know if I was going to do sports play-by-play, or if I was going to be a politician, or if I was going to be a speaker, or what, or a talk show host. But I knew that I would be on stage because that's where my gifts were. And I just cultivated the passion. And when nobody was around, when I was walking home from school, when I later would drive in the car by myself, the passion would override my desire and willingness to sit there passively and listen to music. And I would work my material and develop my ability to think and speak extemporaneously at the utterance of a moment. And in doing so, I developed a craft. And anybody that has passion can find themselves sitting in the room and developing their music or working their art and painting every day or improving the food recipes that they're learning on TV. Like, passion is the key. And as long as we start teaching people to nurture that and to grow it, they'll have a never-ending influx of excitement and opportunity to get better.
Exactly. Do what makes you excited and energized. And
Yeah,
it's interesting to learn from a child. There's so much we can learn from kids, their curiosity,
yeah,
their wonder. And like, let's not squash that just because we don't understand it, right? Let's
right.
explore that. Let's ask them the why questions. Let's figure out a way to support their passions and their dreams, because you're the poster child. You at 12 years old received the support from your parents who believed in you, and you took that fuel inside of you where the teachers might have not understood you as much because of the lack of education back then, and you just stayed strong and you had the drive and the passion and you visualized, which we know is scientifically proven to create billionaires, but you did it and you had people who stood behind you and supported you. So for parents listening out there, like, don't ever feel that you can't help your kid in any way possible. The world is different now. You can be whatever you want, right? They don't have to be doctors, lawyers, teachers.
But I got stuck in my 20s doing jobs that I didn't know how to get out of, right? I
Mm-hmm.
probably waited tables for far too long. I felt this inner frustration of not realizing my full potential. And each one of those growth periods where I got myself to the next stage, like I was on the radio in Phoenix by 26 on the number one station in
Wow.
Arizona. And I was on radio 6 days a week live, but I didn't know anything about finances. So I negotiated a really crap deal and was waiting tables then also at night, even though I was on the number one show in the state. And I just got myself stuck in that. And eventually, each one of those moments where I got myself to the next level, which is a great teachable moment for everybody listening, I had to realize that I was getting what I tolerated. And once I stopped tolerating that level of success and realized there was another level, I broke myself through to the next level, right? You get what you tolerate.
Yeah, that happens so often. Absolutely. I think that's perfectly stated. I think with ADHD, with lack of confidence, we play small, right? Very often.
Yeah.
And until you have that aha moment, whether it's someone reflecting on you or you are so frustrated about your current situation that you just have to do whatever it is to make that change, is that moment, that aha moment where you make the change.
Right.
Was that the aha moment for you that you realized that you had confidence? Like, I know you said, okay, girls started noticing you when you were doing better in school, and then stopped playing small, but like, what was it really? Was it a culmination of things, or was there like something that took place where you were like, yes, I'm confident?
It's a compilation. It was doing well in school, committing myself each and every day to constant, never ending improvement, which didn't just mean exercising my brain, but also going to the gym and exercising every day. I felt incredible inside and it shined outside. And up until
Fantastic.
that point, I felt like I was, in hindsight, well, this is me. You know what always pisses me off is like people are like, well, you've always, you know, people often don't get to see the transformation. Like there's a lot of people that they're like, oh, well, you've always been great at blah, blah, blah. What pisses me off is when I tell people, oh no, look, I mean, like, I don't talk about this. By the way, I didn't talk about it, Brooke, until I was in my 40s. This whole thing about my
Wow.
learning disabilities was a shame secret that my family kept for me.
Wow.
I brought it
And
up
how
one
old
day
are
on the
you?
radio, and I'm 51. And it was a shame. It was a secret my family kept from the world. And it wasn't until my agency hit the Inc. 5000 list as one of the fastest growing privately held businesses in America. And I started stepping out onto big stages, and I started putting out videos on a daily basis, that I realized that I needed to go back to the SALT Center and thank them. Because when I left, I never looked back. And not only did I never look back, but I never thanked them, and they never knew. And of the work that they put into me and the life-changing results and impact that it had on me. So once I looked around and I was like, damn, dude, like, you've got a lot of really cool things happening in your life. You have some unfinished thank you business to do. So I created a video for the SALT Center, a testimonial, where I walked them through my life and got to show the impact that they've had. And I sent it to their email address. I knew nobody there. And then they reached out to me and invited me to the ribbon cutting ceremony of the groundbreaking, or the opening of the brand new SALT Center on campus. Up until that point, we were just shuttled between little classrooms on campus, but now they had a 4-story building that was totally funded by donors, by alumni whose lives were transformed. And I showed up with my wife at the ribbon cutting ceremony and was completely overwhelmed with the emotions of the transformation that had happened over 25 years. Just totally overwhelmed, to the point where I couldn't stop crying. And my wife said to me at some point, by the way, they sat us, my wife and I, at the table with the president of the university and the donors that funded the building. And I could not stop crying at the table, just out of gratitude for what they've done for me. And at some point, after consoling me for maybe 10 minutes, my wife said, dude, I think you're going to have to pull it together. Right. And
get a grip.
Get a grip. And excuse me, I apologize for getting emotional, but educators never get to see, they rarely ever get to see the life-changing transformation that their students have. They go home every day. Sometimes they feel like their job sucks, and they work ridiculous hours, and they give deep from their heart. And rarely, 25 years later, are they at the same place where a student can come back and say, thank you. I owe so much to these people. And I'm so grateful for it, that I'm honored to give back and to support them. And anytime they ask me to do something, the answer is always the same. It's yes. And what else can I do?
So it's not even their transformation. If you think about it, over the 25 years, it's your transformation. So it's like this, almost like coaching, right? You transform with your clients. You both, over those 25 years, became new and improved,
Right.
and expanded, right? So
And
that's fantastic.
I learned for the first time to love me, right? I learned to love me, and the uniqueness, and all the time. What I thought was time wasted was really incubating the man that I got to be later on. So I think it's incredible. It's like you get to look back, and instead of thinking about all the times where you were at parties with friends feeling inferior, it allowed you to develop something unique and different. And I think that humility is my favorite element, because had I not gone through that crisis, and it was a crisis, it could have led me to problems with drinking. And of course, I did mask a lot of problems when I was younger with drinking. in social situations. But the biggest key was realizing that I was on a path for constant and never ending improvement. And that wasn't part of it.
I so appreciate that you are being so vulnerable. And it's clear that your journey has created that core value of humbleness and vulnerability. When someone sees you, when I first met you, all you see, right, is the exterior of Todd, where Todd is right now, what you think he is, right? Not his story of being bullied or feeling less than or not getting girls or feeling isolated, right? And like you're only halfway from the point where you started to recognize that you can be so much more than you were, and to rebirth yourself almost and not be incubated anymore. So I think
Yep.
it's so inspiring for kids, for parents, for adults who are listening right now to know that they're not alone, of course. And look, you have a grown man in his 50s who is crying to show you that, you can have challenges right now, but just stay persistent, believe in yourself, have someone who believes in you, whether it be your teachers, your family, and listen to them and then thank them when you get there, because there's not enough
Absolutely.
thanking. You're right.
My
You're
wife
right.
always says, whenever I complain, my wife's the wisest person I know and the most positive person. We're that annoying couple. Like things are really positive, even when they aren't.
No, you're the
And
best. No, you're the best.
yeah, right. That's us. My wife always says when I'm complaining that things are, too hard or too complicated, she'll say, "Hey, don't ask God for a lighter load, ask for a stronger back." And I think that's part of what you get to go through when you're dealing with challenges. You get to grow those muscles. And instead of looking at it like it's the worst thing in the world, realize that the present moment is often misleading. Look back later and evaluate it, but don't beat yourself up mislabeling the present moment. Because I sure did.
I got the chills. And that's what is so great about reflecting and thinking, like you said, that gratitude and journaling, and really like it's essentially a diary of where you've come from and where you are. We often have that negativity bias with ADHD and always think, I don't want to use the word always, but very often see the gap, like in the gap or the gain. And for you to
Mm-hmm.
go back and thank someone and be reminded of how far you've come should, and I hate the word should too, but hopefully helps you to realize how awesome you are.
It was, thank you, but what it really was the most healing thing I could ever do. Because when you go back and thank and you step out into the world and you make your mess your message to help other people, it liberates you. It was the most liberating thing. One of the first things I do when I step out onto Tony's stage, and it doesn't matter if there's 15,000 people in the audience, I will talk about my learning disabilities because I know that there are people in the room that are struggling with their own thing, their own shit. And if I can help them and show them what a blessing mine was and what I went through, hopefully they'll look at what they went through and see the incredible transformation that they're actively a part of, and that there's another level inside them as long as they're willing to play each and every day, not at the level of good or the level of great, but at the level of outstanding. And the great transformations in life, in all things, in relationships, in personal development, or even in your work, always happens when you commit to executing at the level of outstanding.
Would you say that's your one tip, that your biggest tip that you would leave someone here today with
Oh,
who's struggling?
that one thing is commit yourself to personal growth and development. Everything else is a waste of time. I'm not going to turn on the TV if I've got an opportunity to grow and develop. right? Like comfort's the enemy of growth. The only thing that's going to happen when I get comfortable, the only growth that's going to happen is the growth in my belly, right? I'm going to put on weight.
Get
What do I
in
want to do? I
my
want to be the
belly,
best.
though.
Get in my belly. I want to be the best version of myself. And like
Yeah.
whatever that is for you and whoever's listening, your commitment to being the best version of yourself with your limited time here on earth for the people in your family, for the people that you work and serve, and for your community, and for anybody that believes in you, our responsibility is to be the best version of ourselves. And as long as we're hunting the best version, you know what's going to happen? One, we're not wasting our time or the precious gift that's been given. And also we're walking around every day looking how we can grow or help or advise and guide. It's a significantly healthier place than feeling like you're stuck and stagnant.
I love that. I do. I think that the world would be a lot better if we all had the tools and confidence to believe that, right? And it starts with the mindset, like you mentioned. It starts with the belief, whether it be your internal belief or the help of your family and your friends to show you how much gift you have and you can show the world. So, Todd, where can people find you if they want to learn how to grow their business or help with videos? I mean, I know there's a lot that you can do.
I own a digital marketing agency called Wirebuzz, wirebuzz.com. And I released, as you mentioned, a #1 best-selling book called Accelerating Yes. And as my give back and as my thank you to everybody that's there that's trying to accelerate yes in their life, I'd like to give you a free copy of it. Like, we did great on selling the book, but for everybody in the audience, you could go to toddhartley.com/book and get a free digital download that you can put on your Kindle or your iPad and read it. And inside there, I'm going to teach you across 5 areas in your business how to accelerate yes on getting discovered and generating leads on your website, your sales process, your customer support, and even how you train your team to represent you the right way. All of that can be found in Accelerating Yes. And all you have to do is go to toddhartley.com/book.
And remember, it's 2 Ds, everyone. TODDHART.
Yes. That's how we roll. We'll my parents went all out. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay. I was doing that with my assistant yesterday, actually. She's a Gen Z and I'm like the cusp of millennialism. And I was doing like the West Side, East Side thing. And she had no idea what that was.
Right.
A little nuance there for all of you. But anyway, Todd, it's such a pleasure, like really getting to know your vulnerability and your story. I know that it's touched me and the thousands of people who are going to be listening and watching this. So appreciate you giving up your generous time with us here today. And we wish you the best success in your public speaking engagements. And we hope that you continue to help millions with ADHD and without.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for the time and the work that you do. I appreciate your mission and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Successful with ADHD. I hope it helped you on your journey. And if you need any additional support for you or a loved one with ADHD, feel free to reach out to us at coachingwithbrooke.com and all social media platforms at Coaching with Brooke. And remember, it's Brooke with an E. Thanks again for listening. See you next time.